Many of you are familiar with the recent global consensus of keratoconus that was a product of the four major cornea societies. One of the conclusions in that was that we really don't have an adequate way of staging keratoconus. We don't have an adequate way of determining whether keratoconus is progressing or changing. So because of that, I've been working for the last year with Dr. Gomez and Dr. Renato Ambrosio on a new staging classification, and we call that the ABCD classification. A is for anterior corneal surface, B is for back or posterior corneal surface, C is for corneal thickness, and D is distance visual acuity. The reason for that is the often used but really outdated Amsler-Krumak doesn't adequately convey what's really going on with the cornea. Realize Amsler-Krumak is over 60 years old and predates topography and tomography. Now we realize that we need to look at both the anterior surface, the posterior surface, and the corneal thickness, and realize that treatments may be very different. Treatments may be very different if we have changes only on the posterior surface, but a normal anterior surface. Treatments may be different if we have progressive anterior changes with maybe not as much posterior changes. And obviously for cross-linking, treatments are very different depending on the corneal thickness. So this allows independent grading of both the anterior, posterior corneal thickness, and also then we have distance visual acuity. This is all done with radius of curvature. The reason we use radius of curvature is two reasons. One, diopters actually doesn't convey shape. Diopters is dependent on index of refraction. If we look at the posterior cornea, it's a low power minus lens, which is somewhat confusing. So radius of curvature is really an inherent property of the surface. It's independent of index of refraction. And what we do with this new grading system, we use a 3 millimeter zone centered on the thinnest point of the cornea. We do that because of work previously done with the BAD display, the Belin-Ambrosio display, where the enhanced reference surface, we exclude that area from the reference surface. And now instead of excluding it, we actually concentrate on that area because that area represents the majority of the cone. So we grade A, anterior surface, by looking at the radius of curvature of a 3 millimeter zone centered on the thinnest point. B, the back, 3 millimeter zone centered on the thinnest. C, corneal thickness, which is the thinnest reading, not the apical reading. And then distance visual acuity. Sounds somewhat confusing, but the good news is that it's done automatically on the Penacam. This is the latest release of the software, so this is done automatically. Currently, it's part of what's called the topometric keratoconus grading display. Shortly, we'll be releasing, hopefully we're releasing by ESCRS, a progression display where we're using the same parameters, but will allow you to actually enter exams over a period of time, and will actually allow the machine to determine what's statistically significant change or not. Hopefully, again, this will allow us to have a much better understanding of the different grades of keratoconus, be able to look at treatment modalities based on anatomical changes, and allow us then to really determine when change has occurred.